Okay, hi everybody. Let's get this thing going. Grace and peace to you from the spirit of all life. It is a privilege to be here, and I thank you all. There's so many of you on here. It's a little bit heartbreaking to not be together. It's even more heartbreaking that nuclear weapons are still a major threat to the planet Earth, and so we gather together on this Good Friday to worship together and to proclaim peace for all nations. We're starting this morning with a morning song from Daniel.
Okay. I'll come wherever you are, wonder what my lover of leaving houses no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet pardon, sprung in completeness where his feet pass.
A welcome from Janet Cords Gibson.
Good morning. On behalf of the Ecumenical Peace Institute and the Livermore Conversion Project, I welcome you to our 2000 virtual witness at Livermore Nuclear Weapons Laboratory. While hundreds of you have participated on site since our first witness in 1983, this is the first virtual witness. Because of the coronavirus, only 2 of our members will be at the gates today. Others will be participating from throughout the country. Our preacher this year is Ken Buddigan, who was one of the first organizers at the 1983 witness. He'll be speaking to us from Chicago. Since several parts of our service will actually show many participants, we want you to know that these are recordings from last year's witness itself. So thank you for being part of our witness for peace, and have a wonderful day.
Now we have an honoring of land and ancestors by Isabella and Benjamin.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Isabella Zizi. I come from the Northern Cheyenne, Arikara, and Muskogee Creek tribes. So my family is not from this area. We were relocated in the early 50s, a long time ago, to live here on occupied Ohlone territory. But I live in Richmond, California. I grew up under the shadows of the Chevron refinery. So I understand what the harms to our Mother Earth are every single day. I'm a member of Idle No More SF Bay. I'm also a signatory of the Indigenous Women of the Americas Defending Mother Earth Treaty, and I'm here in placement of Penny Opal Plant, who's not able to be here today, but she does send her love to each and every one of you who are here. So I did want to pay acknowledgement to the Ohlone people whose land that we do occupy, that we do cross on here in the Bay Area, here in Livermore, what's known as Livermore. And I also want to pay acknowledgement to our beautiful mountain, Mount Diablo, what is now called Mount Diablo, as that is a sacred mountain to the Ohlone people, to the indigenous peoples, where lots of prayers and love has been put into those lands. And that the Ohlone people They were here living before colonization had came and crossed these lands and settled into these lands. And so we pay lots of respect to the Ohlone people who still live today. We're still here today, struggling to protect their lands, to protect their rights, to protect their language, for it to continue on. And I wanted to, if it's okay, I wanted to offer a prayer for everyone to start out your day. I wish I can stay with you all day, but duty calls at work. So you're welcome to join me. You can take your hat off. You can stand or sit, whatever you're capable of doing. Dear Creator, thank you for waking every single one of us up today. Thank you for providing this life that you have for all of us. Thank you for this beautiful sunrise that we are blessed today. Thank you for the beautiful energy that it has to offer to all of us, to continue to guide us and protect us for what we have ahead of us on this day, Creator. And we send our love and our guidance to all of those part of the nuclear laboratory here in Livermore. We pray for those who have been impacted and affected by these nuclear weapons over the years. We also pray for those who are healing from those traumas, who are healing from those hurts and those harms caused by those weapons, Creator. And that we come in a very good way, we come with a good heart, that we understand that these harms and these destructions and these extractions of weaponry are also very similar to the extractions that indigenous people face when it comes to uranium mining, when it comes to the oil extractions in our territories. And that any harm that is done to Mother Earth is harm that is done to people, especially women. So Creator, continue to protect us, continue to open up our minds, to open up our hearts, and to open up those minds and those hearts to those who are still distracted by weaponry, by capitalism, by colonization. And let us stand with one another and be with one another here on Mother Earth. So Creator, thank you again for all of this life that you have given us. Oh, amen.
Now we'll have an invocation from Zahra.
Good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. It's such a difficult time for so many of us, and I start by recognizing just how privileged those of us who have been able to tune in this morning are. For it means we have homes and we have health and we have internet, things that not everyone who is sheltering in place or quarantining or afraid of COVID has. In the Muslim tradition, we are taught that we should value 5 before we lose 5. We should value our health before we lose it to sickness, our youth before we no longer have it, our free time before we get busy, our wealth before we lose it, and our life before we lose it. This pandemic has shown us how precarious all of those privileges are, where each of us wonders what could happen if we get COVID-19. And so keeping that in mind, it's my honor and pleasure to join you again this year. I think about how in the Muslim tradition, the loss of one life, the taking of one life is equal to taking of all life. And how decades of imperialism and war have taken so many lives. I wonder about how many of us are so uncertain about what could come next. And yet we have caused that uncertainty as Americans in so many other parts of the world. And so I pray to God by saying, there is no deity but you, glory be to you. Verily, I have been among the wrongdoers, the complicit. O Lord, I seek refuge in you from the difficulties of hardships and the acquisition of wretchedness and ill fate and the enemy's malicious rejoicing in my suffering. O living and eternal maintainer, by your mercy, I seek help. There is no ease except that which you make easy, and indeed you, when you want, make grief and difficulties easy. I take refuge in you from anxiety and sorrow, weakness, laziness, miserliness, and cowardice, the burden of debts, and from being overpowered by people. This is a time for prayer, a time for reflection, and a time for gratitude. And I'm so grateful to be in community with all of you in this newfound way, continuing the fight to protect all of us. Thank you.
A word from our friends witnessing at the lab in Livermore, Carl Anderson.
Hello. This is Carl Anderson, one of the planners. I have been to this lab many dozens of times, sometimes with groups over 1,000, sometimes with only 1 or 2 others, or by myself. This year, during planning, the pandemic became a big deal. We knew that we couldn't do what we did last year, or the year before that, or the year before that. But one person, and also Mark Copeland, who is photographer / videographer, were needed in person. Earlier this morning, I went to another gate about half mile or so from here and watched a stream of workers going in. From the point of view of those who lead the design of nuclear weapons, these people are coming to the lab to do, quote, mission critical activity, which is one of the aspects of, quote, minimum safe operations. Mark and I are also doing mission critical activity, but our mission sharply differs from theirs. Of those who hear me, almost all are watching via computer. You are, quote, working from home, which is immensely valuable. Peace to all.
We'll move to sacred movement. The Lord hears the cry of the poor, with Benjamin, Carla, Kathleen, and John.
We're going to be doing a prayer for that end. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Let me demonstrate it, explain it, and for then those who are able, if you would stand, or you could do it sitting. But the Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. So we put this into a prayer. You would start with your body over. And then from that, coming right from the center, reaching out. So we're here. So we're calling, the Lord hears the cry of the poor, and you stretch your other arm out, you bring it into your heart, and then from your heart, it's like a vision. Blessed be the Lord, seeing a place of no nuclear weapons. It's a new vision. Let me demonstrate it. You're bent over. We stand, if you're able, bend over.
The cry of the poor, blessed be the Lord.
And we try it again.
The Lord hears the cry of the poor, blessed be the Lord.
That's beautiful.
Very
That's
nice.
beautiful.
So I have some verses that I'll sing in between, and then we'll do the sacred movement in between those verses.
Blessed are the poor, the hungry, and the refugees, for they shall be satisfied. victims of racism, misogyny, bigotry, oppression. They are precious in the eyes of God. And blessed are we who live on a planet possessed by nuclear weapons, for we shall be free. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. Blessed is the earth, for she shall be clean. Blessed are those possessed by greed and avarice, for they shall be delivered. And blessed are the salt waters that burn us, and the fresh waters that sustain us, for they shall be purified. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the Lord. One more time. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Blessed be the
Now we have a responsive reading with Haley Brown, Stephen McDermott, and Nancy Taylor.
There are those among us who sell the just for money and the poor for a pair of sandals, as the prophet said. There are those who pile up spoils and plunder in their palaces, who crush the poor, who bring on a rain of violence while reclining on beds of ivory, who join house to house and field to field, so as to take up all there is and remain alone in the land.
I call for a radical reorientation away from our habitual preoccupation with self towards concern for the wider community of beings with whom we are connected, and for conduct which recognizes others' interests alongside our own.
Let us not tire of preaching love. It is the force that will overcome the world.
I will not tire of declaring that if we really want an effective end to violence, we must remove the violence that lies at the root of all violence: structural violence, social injustice, exclusions of citizens from the management of the country, repression. All this is what constitutes the primal cause, from which the rest flows naturally.
An expert in the law tested him with this question: Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments.
Let us not tire of preaching love. It is the force that will overcome the world.
A civilization of love that did not demand justice of people would not be a true civilization. It would not delineate genuine human relationships. It is a caricature of love, to try to cover over with alms what is lacking in justice, to patch over with an appearance of benevolence when social justice is missing. True love begins by demanding what is just in the relations of those who love.
That which is hateful to you, do not do to another. The rest of the Torah is all commentary. Now, go study.
Let us not tire of preaching love. It is the force that will overcome the world.
What marks the genuine church is the word that, burning like the word of the prophets, proclaims and accuses, proclaims to the people God's wonders to be believed and venerated, and accuses of sin those who oppose God's reign so that they may tear that sin out of their hearts, out of their societies, out of their laws, out of the structures that oppress, that imprison, that violate the rights of God and of humanity.
Good and evil are not alike. Repel evil with that which is best. And lo, he between whom and thyself was enmity will become as though he were a warm friend. But none is granted it save those who are steadfast, and none is granted it save those who possess a large share of good.
Let us not tire of preaching love. It is the force that will overcome the world.
Let us not tire of preaching love. It is the force that will overcome the world. Let us not tire of preaching love. Though we see the waves of violence succeed in drowning the fire of Christian love, love must win out. It is the only thing that can.
Grandfather, Sacred One, teach us love, compassion, and honor, that we may heal the earth and heal each other.
Brothers and sisters, you came from our own people. You are killing your own brothers and sisters. Any human, in order to kill, must be subordinate to the law of God, which says, "Thou shalt not kill." No soldier is obliged to obey an order contrary to the law of God. No one has to obey an immoral law. It is high time you obey your consciences rather than sinful orders. In the name of God, therefore, in the name of this suffering people whose cries reach every day more and more urgently to heaven, I implore you, I beg you, I order you, stop the slaughter. Paren la matanza.
Now a song from Daniel, Turn Back, O Man.
Turn back, O man, forswear thy foolish ways. Old now is earth, and none may count her days. Yet thou, her child, whose head is crowned with flames, still wilt not hear thy inner God proclaim. Turn back, O man, forswear thy foolish ways. Earth might be fair, and all men glad and wise. Age after age, their tragic empires rise. Built while they dream, and in that dreaming weep, would men but wake from out his haunted sleep. Earth might be fair, and all men glad and wise. Earth shall be fair, and all her people one. Nor till that hour shall God's will be done. Now, even now, once more from earth to sky, peals forth in joy man's old undaunted cry. Earth shall be fair, and all her folk be one.
Hear the words of the prophet Isaiah. They will build houses and live in them. They will plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They won't build for others to live in, nor plant for others to eat. Like the days of a tree will be the days of my people, and the works of their hands shall long serve them. They will not labor in vain, nor build children to a world of horrors. Now reading from Father Ivan, Luke 23:26-49.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. As they led Jesus away, they took hold of a certain Simon a Cyrenian who was coming in from the country. And after laying the cross on him, they made him carry it behind Jesus. A large crowd of people followed Jesus, including many women who mourned and lamented him. Jesus turned to them and said, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep instead for yourselves and for your children. For indeed the days are coming when people will say, 'Blessed are the barren, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' At that time, people will say to the mountains, 'Fall upon us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if these things are done when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?" Now 2 others, those criminals, were led away with him to be executed. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him, and the criminals there, one on his right and the other on his left. Then Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, they know not what they do." They divided his garments by casting lots. The people stood by and watched. The rulers, meanwhile, sneered at him and said, "He saved others, let him save himself, if he is the chosen one, the Messiah of God." Even the soldiers jeered at him. As they approached to offer him wine, they called out, "If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself." Above him there was an inscription that read, "This is the King of the Jews." Now one of the criminals hanging there reviled Jesus, saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us." The other, however, rebuking him, said in reply, "Have you no fear of God? For you are subject to the same condemnation. And indeed, we have been condemned justly, for the sentence we receive corresponds to our crimes, but this man has done nothing criminal." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied to him, "Amen, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." It was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. because of an eclipse of the sun. Then the veil of the temple was torn down the middle, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. And when he had said this, he breathed his last. The centurion who witnessed what had happened glorified God and said, this man was innocent beyond doubt. When all the people who had gathered for this spectacle saw what had happened, they returned home beating their breasts, but all his acquaintances stood at a distance, including the women who had followed him from Galilee, and saw these events. The Gospel of the Lord.
A message for the healing of the nations by Dr. Ken Budigan, one of the initiators of the Good Friday Witness.
Good morning, everyone. When the theme for this year's service was first chosen, there was no sense at the time how appropriate it would turn out to be. The theme this year is the healing of the nations, from a powerful line in the book of Revelation. How apt this is now, as we watch COVID-19 tear through the fabric of life on every continent and prompting the need for healing in virtually every nation on the planet. Millions are at risk and millions are staying put, even those of us who would normally be physically present at Livermore Laboratory. For the first time in 37 years, we do not gather at the lab. Like people of faith around the world, we are marking Good Friday in self-confinement. And in doing so, we are perhaps glimpsing in a new way the shock of that first Good Friday and that even greater shock of Easter Sunday. We're not together in a religious building. We're not even at the lab, bringing our religious transformative ritual to a place that needs deep healing, transformation, conversion. Instead, we are experiencing in our own way the separation and anxiety of that first Good Friday. Perhaps in our own ways and contexts, we are tasting across these 2,000 years the dread and unknowing that the first disciples experienced. Things have been going along so normally, and then suddenly, dramatically, everything changed. The world they had known disappeared. And perhaps that's true for us too. Like the followers of Jesus, we don't know how this crisis in 2020 is going to turn out. We're confronted with the unknown. We are challenged by the unknown. For now, and maybe forever, we're facing the unknown. Or maybe we can think of it the way the late Zen priest Bernie Glassman put it. We are bearing witness to the unknown. This would not have been something we would choose necessarily, but here we are, dumbstruck, present in this strange and disorienting moment. And in this moment, we bring this disorientation to our annual pilgrimage to Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, whose work designing and perfecting nuclear weapons has unleashed a monumental disorientation in our world and in our lives. We are bearing witness to the lab and all it means, but not doing it in places of worship and not even doing it at the lab. Wherever we are bearing witness to the reality of nuclear weapons. After all, our nuclear culture is not in any one place, but in an infinite number of places. When every point on the globe lies vulnerably in the nuclear crosshairs, the nuclear center is everywhere and nowhere. So wherever we are, watching or hearing this, is a place of bearing witness, prayer, and nonviolent resistance to nuclear weapons. Wherever we are and however disoriented, we are still doing the work of healing the nations. We make an annual journey to this place, longing for healing for ourselves, for our communities, for those who have been harmed directly or structurally, for all those denied resources, dignity, and the fullness of life because a decision was made nearly 80 years ago to build a sprawling system of threat and destruction, a decision that has been ratified over and over again with each passing decade. Over those decades, there has been an alternative decision. Many of you assembling online today have been faithfully voting with your lives for another way, a world free from nuclear weapons. Even as we face the unknown in this strange moment, we are maintaining a steadfast tradition, visible and invisible, calling for a world that does not rely on weapons of mass destruction, but instead uses its bounty to meet the needs of people everywhere in this wounded and sacred world. From the very first days of the nuclear age, there have been voices ringing out for the great conversion, the disarmament of the United States and all nuclear powers, and the disarmament of our own hearts and lives that have made the nuclear threat possible. Within days of the bombing of Hiroshima, Dorothy Day wrote forcefully against this barbaric act, and she would go on to organize a movement of nonviolent resistance in the 1950s, disobeying orders to comply with civil defense drills when the entire population in the United States was ordered to meekly go into fallout shelters. And there were so many others, the brave souls who sailed a boat called the Golden Rule into a nuclear test site in the South Pacific, risking death to stop a nuclear detonation. The mothers who organized against nuclear testing and the radioactivity above ground tests were spreading around the world. Endless anti-nuclear walks across the United States, Europe, and the Soviet Union. Innumerable mobilizations, marches, and demonstrations every decade, including 1 million who marched in Central Park, and the 1,400 of us who were arrested at Livermore, also in 1982. The women of Grenham Common, who held a 19-year vigil at that US base in England, and the concerted global campaign to achieve the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty in the 1990s, and many, many other efforts. The anti-nuclear weapons movement has been called the longest single worldwide movement in history, and we are continuing that tradition today from wherever we are hunkered down. We're grateful for all the groups that have persevered in organizing this movement here at Livermore on Good Friday all these years, especially the Ecumenical Peace Institute, Tri-Valley Cares, Western States Legal Foundation, and Livermore Conversion Project. Each of you have, in season and out, faced the disorientation of the nuclear threat with faithful resistance and commitment. Each of your efforts has played an important role in the historical movement for the healing of the nations. This particular tradition at Livermore began on Good Friday in 1983, when a handful of us decided to challenge this disorientation and to bear witness to the unknown. We were a handful of students from the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. And we decided that we would want to also join our voices to people all over, making this change possible. The centerpiece of this action would be the 3 members of our group, Terry Messman, Darla Rucker, and Patricia Bruno, would be confirmed in the Catholic Church. This was a highly unusual place to hold such a ritual, but they felt that having this take place at a nuclear weapons laboratory would signify their spiritual and theological conviction that reception into the church meant reception into Jesus's way of the cross for peace and disarmament. Father Bill O'Donnell, the late pastor of St. Joseph the Worker Catholic Church, Mary Doyle, the pastoral associate at Holy Spirit Catholic Church, and Fathers Richard Chilson and Michael Park, also at Holy Spirit, presided at this ceremony. After the service and confirmation, we labeled the mock-up of the MX missile which had been laying up to that point unobtrusively to one side of the stage as the nuclear cross. Then we hoisted the nuclear cross from the ground. One of our themes was a call for the lab to take back the nuclear cross. We had planned to take it to the lab's southwest gate, but a long flank of California Highway Patrol officers had been flung across the width of East Avenue. We would not be allowed to reach the gate, so we improvised, laying it in the center of the intersection of Vasco and East. As we chained ourselves to the missile, beginning to enact a die-in, we asked the others risking arrest to kneel, sit, or stand in lines at each of the 4 perimeters of the intersection. Eventually, 73 of us were arrested. The 8 of us chained to the missile were cut free by the sheriffs and arrested, and then the missile itself was dragged away by authorities. When we went to trial months later, we wanted to have the mock-up of the MX missile brought into the courtroom as Exhibit A, but we were told it was laying at the bottom of the Livermore dump. We took this to be a fitting symbol of disarmament. In fact, as we had hoped, the lab had indeed taken back the nuclear cross. And here we are today, with all of you having continued this witness for 4 decades. The Pentagon's budget request for fiscal year 2021 asked for over $100 billion more than last year for nuclear weapons and advanced conventional arms. This at a time when COVID-19 has laid bare the fact that the survival of the world depends not on weapons, but on rebuilding a world that works for everyone. Violence, including nuclear weapons, won't flatten the curve of infection or heal those who have tested positive. Violence, including nuclear weapons, will not prevent transmission, treat the sick, console the dying, and comfort survivors. In a world where ending a pandemic depends on the well-being of all of us, and not only certain groups or certain nations, our very survival depends once and for all in fashioning a global safety net with universal health care for all, economic and social equity for all, dignity and human rights for all. We are at a crossroads. When the pandemic passes, the existing systems will try to drive us back to the normalcy of violence and injustice, the normalcy of 2019 and all the years before it. But it need not be like that. As Father Brian Massingale, a professor at Fordham University, has said, our goal cannot be a return to an unjust normal. We, all of us, can join with our sisters and brothers worldwide who have faced the brunt of the crisis to set the world once and for all in a new direction. A world building on the power and spirit of nonviolent engagement that has been unleashed in response to this disaster. Compassion, courage, resilience, sacrifice, and concerted action for the common good. The greatest social movement in human history is coming. We have heard some important signals in this direction, including the UN Secretary General's call for a global ceasefire in light of COVID-19, which a dozen countries at war have responded to favorably, and Pope Francis's historic declaration that the possession, as well as the use of nuclear weapons, is ultimately inadmissible. But there are many other seedlings of nonviolence, and we can all pursue them and nurture them in this emerging global movement, this movement of movements. In a curious way, COVID-19 is a strange messenger. It is calling us to resolutely join this planetary movement. So, in this time of anxiety, let us renew our relationship with our loved ones, even if we are in close quarters. In this time of dislocation, let us nurture the bonds of connection and solidarity. In this time of instability, let us imagine what nonviolent practice we ourselves can take and deepen. In this time of disruption, let us find a way to commit our lives to the healing and well-being of all, not almost all, but all. Sisters and brothers, let us join this all-embracing movement for the great turning, as Joanna Macy calls it. Let us commit ourselves to the dramatic, systemic transformation needed now more than ever. The vision, principles, and strategies of nonviolent movement building will strengthen our capacity as agents of nonviolent change for a renewed and revitalized world and for the healing of the nations.
Thank you, Ken. Now a message on how we can make an offering from Janet Courts Gibson.
So this year is the 75th anniversary of the nuclear bombing of Hiroshima. And as Ken has said, Livermore is still developing weapons, as are many other countries throughout the world. But we do have great opportunity ahead of us, and the need for your involvement and support to bring about world peace is crucial, now more than ever. Therefore, we encourage your active participation wherever you are in the peace movement. We welcome your financial support for the continuing work of EPI and Livermore Conversion Project. Please make your checks, if you can contribute financially, out to EPI and mail to our PO box. I have a little sign here. Does this, oh, it comes up backwards, so it's not gonna work. It's PO Box 933, Berkeley, California, 94709. And for more information, you can go to the EPI website. Thank you for participating, and let us join together to bring about a new world. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony Scar, for that. Daniel has reflections on Passover.
I begin with the Shechianu, from the Hebrew meaning, who has given us life. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Shechianu v'kiyimanu v'higilanu lazmen chazeh. Amen. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who has kept us alive, sustained us, and brought us safely to this joyous season. The English line from Yerushalayim Shel Sahav, Jerusalem of gold, feels eerily prophetic. Far away beyond the desert, 1,000 suns shall glow. Must the land be both cleansed and poisoned by the fire of a nuclear holocaust? And as a Jew, I do not evoke that word casually. The 10th and worst of the plagues to be visited upon ancient Egypt was the death of the Egyptian firstborn. The Israelites were instructed to mark the doorposts of their homes with the blood of a slaughtered spring lamb, and upon seeing this, the Spirit of the Lord knew to pass over the firstborn in these homes. We know the plagues by many names, among them racism, homophobia, misogyny, Islamophobia, xenophobia. How many spring lambs must we sacrifice, slaughter, in hopes that the vengeful God of our creation will pass over us, spare us, take other children, not mine? How many modern-day pharaohs must we endure? Today, on this confluence of high holy days of the Jewish and Christian faith traditions, I call for shalom, an ancient Hebrew word meaning harmony. Next year, Jerusalem, the city of hope, the land of promise for all of God's children, free from the deadly scourge of COVID-19. Next year, a Jerusalem of harmony, of shalom. I invite you to join in Namaste Chaverim. I believe the words are posted on the order of worship anyway. Ah, there they are. Namaste Chaverim, Assalamu alaikum, Nam Yum Renge Kyo, La Paz se contigo. Namaste Chaverim, Assalamu alaikum, Nam Yum Renge Kyo, La Paz se contigo. Namaste Chaverim, Assalamu alaikum, Nam Yum Renge Kyo, La Paz se contigo. Peace be with you always, always. Namaste.
As we close the meeting, I've been reflecting on our isolation and separateness here, and just pray that we would feel united by the spirit of all life. And I've been thinking about this inspiring quote from Mahatma Gandhi: "The only tyrant I accept in this world is the still small voice within me. And even though I have to face the prospect of being a minority of one, I humbly believe I have the courage to be in such a hopeless minority." And from Philippians 4, friends, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May God make her face shine upon you and give you peace, now and forevermore. Amen.
Amen.
Now we'll have a march to the gate.
Just a little while longer. Pray on, just a little while longer. You've got to pray on, just a little while longer. 'Cause everything's gonna be alright. Spirit of peace, to your cause we give our strength. Lord, they reign and war shall cease.
police officer in the city of Livermore, and a peace officer in the state of California. I hereby inform you that you are in violation of state and city laws, and that this is an unlawful assemblage. In the name of the people of the state of California, I am ordering you to disperse immediately. Failure to disperse will mean you are subject to arrest.
In the name of God, we are asking Livermore Labs to stop developing nuclear weapons.
I am Officer Long, a police officer from the city of Livermore and a peace officer from the state of California. I hereby inform you that you are in violation of state and city laws and that this is an unlawful assemblage. In the name of the people of the state of California, I am ordering you to disperse immediately. Failure to disperse will mean you are subject to arrest.
Watch in and out first. I gave one of my earrings. One of my batteries. It's really the out. Yeah, last time. You want to maybe let's see this one. Actually, I want to get the
Somebody's poisoning our air. Somebody's poisoning our air.
You want to get arrested first?
Don't you know there's gonna somebody's poisoning our air. It's gonna fall to we won't be silent anymore.
In the name of the people of the state of California, I order you to disperse immediately. Failure to disperse will mean that you are subject to arrest.
We are peace officers. We are the people that represent the state of California.
On behalf of the people of the world, we ask you to stop making nuclear weapons.
In the name of the Prince of Peace, we order these weapons to be dispersed.
Dismantle. We heard this morning that the U.S. plans to spend $2 trillion over the next 30 years developing more nuclear weapons. Despite our treaties. Can you think of some better ways that we can spend that money? The treaties we've signed. For health care, for housing, for people who have no roof over their heads. We could build a decent life for every person on the planet. How much safer we would all be. Our non-proliferation treaties are the law of this land, and the more we make nuclear bombs here and other weapons for sale to other countries, the more you're participating in an illegal system according to our own laws.
We demand it of other countries, but we don't take it on ourselves.
This is a peaceful and lawful assemblage of individuals exercising their constitutional rights, supporting the United States of America.
Petitioning our government.
We are not against the government. We are here to protect government by showing a better path.
I am Sergeant Sanchez, a police officer with the city of Livermore and a peace officer in the state of California. I hereby inform you that you're in violation of state and city laws and that this is an unlawful assemblage. In the name of the people of the state of California, I order you to disperse immediately. Failure to disperse will mean that you are subject to arrest.
We call this a lawful assembly.
I am Sergeant Sanchez, a police officer with the city of Livermore and a peace officer of the state of California. I hereby inform you that you are in violation of state and city laws and that this is an unlawful assemblage. In the name of the people of the state of California, I order you to disperse immediately.
We don't accept that interpretation of the law.
You are subject to arrest.
That's not a valid interpretation of the law.
What are you going to tell your children when you go home tonight?
There goes St. Francis incarnate.
I'm here with you. You might get arrested.
We were just following orders was seriously challenged at the Nuremberg trial.
I hereby inform you that you're in violation of state and city laws and that this is an unlawful assembly. In the name of the people of the state of California, I order you to disperse immediately. Failure to disperse will mean that you're subject to arrest.
One person in the left window, do you have ID with you today? All right. Do you have ID with you today? Do you have the ID with you? The ID?
I'm gonna say bye now because we need to leave, but I'm gonna wait till you go. Be here in solidarity. Sorry. Don't forget, you're middle-aged.
I'm Sergeant Sanchez, a police officer, City of Livermore, and a peace officer, State of California. I hereby inform you that you are in violation of state and city laws and that this is an unlawful assembly. In the name of the people of the State of California, I order you to disperse immediately. Failure to disperse will mean that you are subject to arrest.
Over on the other side?
Did they give you a detention notice or a citation? Or
Yes, the same old pink.
The pink citation.
Yes. So, but I was interpreting it last year that it's not an arrest, but it is an arrest. It's just that it's an arrest and release. I mean, they detain you, and I asked him. He says, yes, it actually is an arrest, but it's a release.
So you're free now.
Yeah, free to live in a fascist world. We can start over.
You gonna go in again?
I hereby inform you that you're in violation of state and city laws and that this is an unlawful assemblage. In the name of the people of the State of California, I order you to disperse immediately. Failure to disperse will mean you are subject to arrest.
We are the people of California, and we are peace officers.
Where's he looking?
Oh.
It's probably because of all those middle-aged people.
Well, actually, I've had that happen to me too. There were times when they actually let me vouch for other people.
Try this again.
It's like a party, isn't it? Everything is
Oh, yes. Well, nice talking to you. Yes, it's nice being detained. You were detained.
Now, Louis thinks we should file a class action lawsuit.
So, I mean, Iran.